My name is Gaurav, and on behalf of Greenwork Trust, I welcome you to this online session. We are a Mumbai-based organization working for nature conservation, and we strongly believe that education and awareness are very important. So during this lockdown, we bring to you these informative sessions about on various topics. So our today's topics, as you all know, is the orchids of Western Ghats, and today's speaker is going to be Dr. V. Krishnakumar. So he is an orchid enthusiast, and professionally, he is an English professor with an PhD in English literature. He is also a founder president of Alappuzha Natural History Society, and I request Dr. Krishna Kumar to start his session. So over to you, sir.
Oh, thank you, Mr. Gaurav. Good evening. Introducer told I am only an orchid enthusiast with a little base of science, but my interest put some knowledge about it in me. And our sessions like this, as the introducer told you, is designed to give you some idea about nature in general and to create a sense of love towards it so that you can protect it. So without wasting much time, let me first thank the organizers of the Green Trust Mumbai for organizing this and giving me an opportunity to tell you a few words about my love towards orchids. Now let us go to the presentation. So this is something very basic that I am going to do here. So as a disclaimer, I would like to tell you, uh, I may be quite unaware of, say, for example, the main initiatives going in this field of orchid conservation, preservation, etc. And I'm going to tell you the basics of how you can find an orchid plant, how you can identify an orchid, and what are its peculiarities, the general basic things in general about orchids. Now, Western Ghats is a very biologically diverse area, as you know, and there are representatives of orchids as well in plenty there. So let us go to the session, starting with the name of orchids. Why this peculiar name orchid is given to these plants? So the name orchid has a Greek root, which is the term orchis, meaning human testicles. Some plants have a pseudobulb having a resemblance with human testicles, and naturally the early uh, people, the aborigines, they might have called it orchid, and that continued forever. So looking at the pictures that I will show you later, we can understand how this naming is so apt with the shape of the pseudobulb they have in common. And you know, orchid is the biggest of plant families. See the statistics? There are already identified 27,000 species of orchids, and many are yet to be found out. So it comes to about 10% of the total plant kingdom. See, you can imagine the magnitude of this family of orchids. And among these, India, our country, has 1,256 species identified, and a good share of it is there in the Western Ghats as well. And I being a Keralite, has given statistics of Kerala, 111 in Kerala, and Tamil Nadu has 92. So the southern part of Western Ghats has quite a few number of orchids in the Indian subcontinent. Now let us see, being such a very big family with 27,000 members already found, It has certain very peculiar features. These orchids have very peculiar features. The first one is its cosmopolitanism. Right from the level of the sea, you can find it up to 5,000 meters of altitude. And mind you, the average height of the Western Ghats is only 2,650 meters. So even at 5,000 meters of altitude, you can come across orchid plants. Now half of them are epiphytically growing. Epiphytic in the sense they are growing in association with trees, mostly on tree trunks. So half of them on trees and half of them on ground. So they divide between the earth and the sky. So they have peculiar roots as well. The peculiar kind of tissue with which the roots are comprised is velamen in the case of orchids, which is a spongy-like tissue which can retain water. So though this class is on natural species of orchids, I know from among the audience here, there may be people interested in growing garden varieties, hybrids as well. So for them, this is a tip, because velamen tissue can hold water. When you grow it in your garden, never drench it with water. That will be harmful for them. So they have the capacity to collect it in small quantities, retain it like that of a sponge, and naturally you need only give it little water, very little water. Now the growth pattern, I tell you all this just to show the magnitude of the spreading of this large family of plants. They have different growth patterns, mainly two types of growth patterns. One is monopodial and the other is sympodial. I shall show you them through pictures in the following slides. So monopodial and sympodial. The term itself has the meaning in it. Monopodial, podium, and mono, single. So growing continuously. That kind of growth is called monopodial, without an end. If nothing happens to the apical bud or the growing tip, the plant will grow incessantly without any stop. That is monopodial. Then sympodial is just the opposite. It has limited growth. The stem has a particular growth. It will stop there, either giving us flowers from the top, or even otherwise also. It will stop there. Now a second stem adjoining it will grow. That also stop at somewhere. Then the third one, like that, a cluster of stems. That is sympodial type of growth. Now leaves are also of different kinds. The first one is terete, that will look like a pencil. So our basic idea of a leaf of a plant is a very flattened thing, but here orchids have a rounded pencil-like leaves. They are called the terete kind. And the third one, strap, that is the usual shape of the thickness and shape of usual plant leaves. That is a strap. So semi-terete is in between. It is half rounded. It has a deep groove in the middle of the leaf. That is the style of semi-terete leaves. Then flowers. That is the most peculiar with orchids, which give them this charm, their peculiar charm. In all different hues, you have orchid flowers. In almost all the hues available in nature, in colors available in nature, you have orchid flowers. Then even green is there. Then there are flowers having very sweet smell to a pleasant, not that pungent, but still pleasant smell, to strong, detestable odor as well. So from bad smell to good smell, you have all, and even without any smell, all kinds of features that orchids flowers exhibit. Then we will find in detail about the flower structure in the coming slides. Usually the naming of the orchid, like the bee orchid or the lady's slipper orchid or the spider orchid or the tiger orchid, All these names are based on the shape of the flower, one thing, or the flower bunch, the bunch of flowers as a whole. It may resemble something from which the names are usually taken. For example, if it is the tiger orchid, that is what we call Gramophylum, not in our Western Ghats, I'm just telling you as an example. The tiger orchid has flowers with petals having stripes exactly like that of the tiger skin. Okay, flowers, they are the reason for their naming and their peculiar charm. Then the seed. So that is another very unique feature of orchids. Their seed is a bare embryo. There is nothing other than the embryo. Usually, the seeds, whether it is an egg of the mammal, egg of a bird, or it is a seed of a plant, usually there is stored food for the small one when it comes first to this universe. But orchid is very peculiar. It does not store any food for the young one or the embryo. The embryo from day one has to be self-sufficient. So Darwin's theory of survival of the fittest is best suited to the orchid plant. Their seeds have no what you call in botany, endosperm. There is no endosperm. There is no stored food, but only the embryo. So this makes its life cycle also complex. Why? Because there is no food, he has to steal food from somewhere right from day one. What is that? Fungal mycorrhiza. So when the seed gets dispersed, it may fall on a substratum where it chances to meet with some kind of fungus from the mycelia of which they can draw initial food till the first 1-2 leaves develop. Once the leaves are developed, they can photosynthesize. So unless they get some sort of such association, that seed will not germinate and it will be lost. So even though orchids produce lakhs of seeds, I say lakhs of seeds, only a few, say 5 to 10% germinates in nature. So that is one peculiarity of its seed. And for pollination as well, they are very specific. They need specific pollinators to pollinate the flowers. Then the last one, but not the least, it is economically very important. They are the queen of orchid flowers, are the queen of the garden in floristry, horticulture, etc. They are at the top rung just because they are mostly needed for decorations as they have greatest shelf life available. So the perfumes also, and even in tribal and such medicinal practices, such therapeutic practices, orchids are used. So I may just add here one more thing. On the first slide, we have seen the name orchid has come from orchis. So there was a belief that this nature communicates with us in a non-verbal fashion. That is how it imitates human organs. So if a particular leaf, say for example hydrocotyle, which is called brahmi in Malayalam, I don't know what it is called in Hindi, it is good for memory. It is said that it is good for memory, and it is proved so. The leaf resembles the cross section of human brain. So nature gives us the brain tonic in the shape of the brain. Similarly, certain orchid plants are used as aphrodisiacs, and their pseudobulbs resemble human testicles. So aphrodisiacs are there. We will see them through the slides. Now, this is the growth pattern I have already told you about. This is not an orchid species. This is just to show you how orchids grow. This is a hybrid cultivar, Vanda Josephine Van Brero, that's the name, that grows monopodially. I told you monopodial growth is incessant growth. Unless you cut it or unless something happens to the top apical bud or the growing tip, this will grow continuously. Vandas are like that. So this is an unlimited growth pattern, monopodial. This is the sympodial, and see the pseudobulbs also are there. So these bulbs are the peculiarities of sympodial type of orchids in general. In general only, there are monopodial stems also resembling uh, pseudobulbs, not in the Western Ghats, but they are there. So this is sympodial growth. One this is the first one. Then there is the second one, third one. These are all attached underneath. So one bulb ends growth here, then the second one comes. This is actually old one. From this has come, then this has come, then this has come, like that. Now leaf patterns. I told you leaves are also different. This is a strap leaf, which resembles any leaf without any thickness or fleshy nature, very strap-like. And there is one more peculiarity for this. Looking at the plant, even when it is not found in the habitat, you can understand in which kind of habitat it might be growing, because this strap leaf do not withstand heat or sunlight as of the other leaf pattern. Which is the other leaf pattern? Terete leaf pattern. Pencil-like. See that? This is another vanda. See that? This is rounded like a pencil. It resembles a stem, and there is no much difference between this part, the stem, and this part, the leaf. This is terete leaf. This can withstand, see, it's written here, withstands exposure to direct sunlight and heat. It can withstand any amount of heat. This is semi-terete. In between the strap and the terete. Here, see this, here is a ridge, a cavity-like thing, a furrow-like thing here, which is the third pattern. So orchids exhibit all these varied forms, not only in its leaf, not only in its flower, not only in roots, not only in distribution, in every aspect of a plant, orchids are different. Now let us go to the orchid flower. So only with this you can ascertain whether a plant is an orchid or not. So flower is the acid test for orchids. See, orchids are zygomorphic flowers. Orchid flowers are zygomorphic. What is zygomorphic? It can be cut into two equal parts only in one plane. See the shape of the flower? See these pointed things, these three, it is marked there. They are sepals. The first whorl of a flower. In certain flowers, you might have seen this as green. For example, the most common hibiscus. You can see these sepals forming a calyx as the first whorl. So this is the most attractive part with all the flowers, the petals. So orchids have 3 petals and 3 sepals. The first whorl, 3 numbers, the second whorl, 3 numbers. So they can be cut into 2 equal halves only in this plane. Why only in this plane, not this way? Because this one, the one petal which is peculiarly shaped. Now let us see what it is called. It is called labellum or the lip. Here it is written lip. So the third petal is different in shape, and inside that petal is prepared the genital parts. It is called the column. The column consists of at the tip the anther cap, then the anther, then the stigma, which forms a tube, which can in certain flowers extend backwards to form the honey tunnel. Okay, this is the peculiarity of the orchid flower. So 3 sepals, 3 petals, and among that 3 petal, one is differently shaped, which is called the lip or labellum. Now see that this is the genital parts. We have seen in the previous slide the tip of the part, and here in the second slide it is the tip. See, the anther cap and the anther. Then inside it is the pollinium. Just below that, there is a stigma. Then there is the corm. And this is the ovary part which extends backwards. Okay. So the stamen and pistil in all their parts are fused to form a column. The column is otherwise called the honey tube, which can extend backwards. Now this is a hybrid. I have used this slide only to show you a peculiarity of orchid flowers, which we have not discussed yet. What is that? The flower buds resupinate. This is a peculiarity seen in the orchids. Another peculiarity, let us say, another peculiarity, another unique peculiarity of orchids, which in which it resembles even human being. See, what is it? This is a bud just before blooming. And where is that tubular part, the honey tube, the fused column standing towards this part? But look at this. This is an younger bud. So these are all younger buds. So this one is just before opening. So just before opening, this turns to 180 degree. This one turns 180. So the honey tube comes to the down. That's why this peculiar petal is always towards the under part. Actually, this is the upper petal, but it comes to the down. So we still call it the upper petal. See that? See what is written there. Inferior ovary rotates 180 degree. The whole bud will rotate 180 degree, so that this upper petal becomes to form the lip or labellum, which is the peculiar part of the orchid flower, which gives its peculiar shape and even in some cases the name for that particular plant. These are the peculiarities of orchids in orchid flowers in general. Now, once again, to recap the peculiarity of orchid flowers, the upper medial petal, though we say it is the upper medial petal, in an open flower it will be towards the lower side. So don't get misunderstood by this terminology, the upper medial petal. Actually, in an open flower comes down because of the resupination, the 180 degree turn just before the flower blooms, and it forms the labellum or the lip. So once again, 3 sepals and 3 petals, out of which 1 petal is modified to give it all the charm as well as the peculiarity. Okay. Now let us go to the plants found in the Western Ghats. Now let me at the very outset say that this is not a comprehensive presentation. I didn't include all the 111 species found in Kerala, but just a few members. Let me say about 1/4 of the species available with the Western Ghats. Then what is the selection procedure? I will tell you. I have selected members from at least the major species. Dendrobium, as you know, is the largest family in largest species in the family of orchids. That is true with the Western Ghats as well. We have plenty of Dendrobium varieties there, and I have included such representative members from the species available in the Western Ghats. And the second criteria is the importance in the sense red listed ones, threatened species, they are included. Then peculiar ones, peculiar because of the shape. So once you see the slides, you will be able to find it easily in the Western Ghats if you get a chance to confront them on your travels. That is the next criteria. And the most important criteria used is the widely distributed ones. So the plants included here. So from this slide onwards, we are looking at, we are familiarizing with the actual. From here, we look upon slides having the picture of plants and its flowers. So the most commonly distributed plants, that is the criteria I have used in selection of the representatives from the Western Ghats. Now, the first one is the Gramophone Orchid. So, I have told you uh, among the peculiarities of orchid plants, one is the shape of its labellum or the lip of the flower, or even the whole shape of the flower, or the total shape of the inflorescence or the flower bunch. These are the categories usually uh, behind naming of orchids. Now, without my explanation, you can see how this plant is called gramophone orchids. Why this plant is called gramophone orchid? This is Porpax reticulata, commonly seen, and from the slide itself, you can find where it is located, where this plant grows. So this plant grows in semi-evergreen forests at moderate altitudes uh, on tree trunks, but the particular photo shows you they are growing in some hard surface. There also it can grow once it gets water in spray from nearby streams. I told you in the beginning itself, orchids do not need much water. They need only an occasional spray. And this is given as the first slide just to show you that why this is getting the name orchids. This part resembles human testicles, and the name gramophone because it resembles the gramophone mic. So this is Porpax reticulata, the gramophone orchid, very beautiful because of its uh, dark green stem. This is the stem part, and the dark brick red flowers. The flowering season also is incorporated in every slide, just to make you aware of in which period. So from this you can even, this is another pointer towards identifying a plant. So if you see this flower in September, you can say that this is not Porpax, but some other variety. This is not Porpax reticulata, at least you can say. So that's why this is also included in every slide. So this Porpax reticulata or the gramophone orchid flowers in moderate altitudes during the months of February to June. Now this is a red listed one that is explained in the slide itself. I will say that this is the star of Western Ghats, highly threatened one. It was seen in very small area. See, restricted to about 4 square kilometers only in the Agasthyamala biosphere. So I should say it was, because it is not seen in that place nowadays. But God forbid this has not been extinct because of the timely intervention of the Tropical Botanical Research Institute, Palo de Antrim. They have cultivated it in large numbers, and they have tried to plant it in its habitat so that it grows luxuriantly there. This is called Paphiopedilum drury, the lady's shoe orchid, and I repeat, this is the star of the Western Ghats because of its um, status. And this is a high altitude dweller, 1400 to 1800 meters of altitude. It's critically endangered. And see the flowering season, May to July. Now this grows on the ground. See the leaf, the pattern of the leaf. You may remember this is the strap leaf pattern, very thin and blade-like leaf, not roundish, not succulent. These are strap-like leaf. So this need only moderate sunlight. In the beginning itself, I told you the shape of the leaf, the nature of the leaf gives us some idea of its habitat as well. So this grows on the ground. In the beginning, we came across the fact that 50% of the orchids grow epiphytically and the other 50 on the ground or even on rocks, wet rocks near the streams, etc. We have seen the Porpax of the previous slide growing near the stream on a rock. Now see the flowering season, May to July. What is the peculiarity of this season in the Western Ghats? After May, there will be the onset of monsoon. There will be the southwest monsoon in Western Ghats. So most of the ground orchids, or that's a common term that we use, orchids growing on the ground in the sense on a humus rich substratum, on the forest floor itself, where you get enough of humus. And such orchids have a usual tendency to survive the winter by sleeping underneath. There will be not even a single sign of a plant there during the severe summer season. Just after the first showers, the onset of the monsoon, or even before the monsoon in the Western Ghats, we get occasional showers, and that shower is the trigger, and the underground stem immediately sprouts into a shoot, ending in a flower like this. Mostly these are solitary flowers, and a single plant can produce more than one flower, but the usual thing is the tip ends in a flower. This is the general trait with almost all the ground orchids, or the orchid growing on the soil. Their growth ends in a flower or in a bunch of flowers. And here, this Paphiopedilum drury, see the name, why the name? Lady's shoe. See the labellum, the lip. The lip is shaped like a shoe, a half shoe. So it gets the name lady's shoe orchid. So after the first shower, there is a vigorous growth of the stem ending in a flower. So you can look at the season, the flowering season, May to July. So this season, in the coming slides also, you can note for that. If it is between the beginning of the monsoon and by the end of the monsoon, or between May and December, you can say, I'm sorry, they are mostly ground orchids growing in connection with the onset of the monsoon. This is another star. This also is critically endangered. Very beautiful. The very leaf is beautiful, and their beauty is the villain. It attracts the exploiters. Even for growing in the home garden, people take this from, people unscrupulously take this away from their habitat. That is ruining its presence there. The lady slipper orchid, as well as the jewel orchids, and Hydrea is called the jewel orchid. That is a common name. This jewel orchid as well as the lady slipper orchid are vastly exploited by local gardeners, and that's why they are at the fringe of extinction. This because of its leaf, and this is mostly exploited even without a flower. See, most of the orchid species, unlike the hybrids, flower only once in an year. So that is not a good quality for florists, because they need flowers all the round the clock. But here these species are, at least they have very beautiful leaf, so they exploit this. See the flowers here in the inset, you can see the flowers. They are very small flowers, not at all attractive, but the whole plant is attractive, and this can be grown as an indoor plant when it becomes more beautiful. So that is the reason why this is exploited on large scale. So this is endemic to the southwestern Ghats, and it is critically endangered. Another high altitude dweller. See again the flowering season, May to June. So they are very flimsy plants, these are very flimsy plants. So they cannot withstand the heavy rain during, see the leaf also, the shape of the leaf also very flattened and ovate. So this has the capacity to withstand either rain or sunlight to a very minimal degree. So by June, by the onset of monsoon, their flowering is over. Okay. Now Oberonia recurva. So we have seen two stars, and this one is at loggerheads. Not much beautiful, but still it is an orchid and showing all the peculiarities of a epiphytic orchid. It is growing on a large tree trunk, hanging downwards. This is the flower, very microscopic flowers, large flower stalk is there. It's a very long one. Thousands of flowers are there. And its peculiarity is this is found almost everywhere in the southern Western Ghats. Everywhere, widely spread, most widely spread. So you cannot but see once you enter the Western Ghats, Oberonia. Very popular. And you can look at its growth. This also is a symbodial kind of growing plant. Different bulbs with a fixed growth, and how it ends in a flower. See, at the tip you can see the flower, the inflorescence or the flower bunch coming. So this is the characteristic feature of an epiphytic orchid. It grows on tree trunks. Mostly it overhangs. It's not growing straight from the trunk, but hanging downwards. This is the usual, because mostly if it grows upwards, there can be disturbance of monkeys, squirrels, birds, etc. using this part, the top part. Here there is no much problem. That's why most of the epiphytic orchids overhang. Okay. Now this one is another one, a very common species in the Western Ghats. See the pseudobulbs here, very clear in the picture. Pseudobulbs. Urea Myosorensis. See the bulbs here, the strap leaf. This is also found in the semi-evergreen and the dry forests of moderate elevation. The peculiarity of this is the stem. This plant is its stem. What is it? The reddish pseudobulbs. Though there are leaves very much alike like other orchids, the stem is a bit different. It has a reddish brown color, and 3 to 5 leaves is the usual number. See here, 3 to 5 leaves maximum, and the flowers are also sweetly scented. The creamy petals, you can see the labellum like a dagger here, creamy white total color. A lip has a bit more yellowish color in it. Sweetly scented, very fragrant flowers. See, the flowering season here is a bit different, unlike the ground orchid. So this is an epiphytic orchid, and in dry condition they see dry forests, evergreen and dry parts in moderate elevation. So it is from September to November. After the heavy downpour, at the beginning of the summer season, it will begin to flower. So in the month of November, you can see the flower. Now this is another ground orchid. So you can see the ground. See again flowering July, August. So here also is a ground orchid, very beautiful one, Urea Myosorensis. From the name, you can Bombay Walas, you can easily distinguish why it is given this name, because of the area. Panchgani area, this is identified from there, and that's why it is called Urea Myosorensis. Beautiful flowers, white, pure white flowers, and that is endemic to Western Ghats. Grows in humus-rich soil or even in grasslands, savannas, above 1,000 meters. That is its peculiarity. It's a high altitude dweller with fragrant flowers. The flowering season is the monsoon. Now, Christmas tree orchid, Christmas orchid. Why it is called so? The shape. See the shape of the inflorescence. It resembles a Christmas tree. Very small flowers, and it grows on the ground. See the leaf, and that's why this shady forest. See the leaf. Just see the other slide. See the leaf here, a bit more thick, not simply strap. This is even called with another name that's not actually admitted by the scientists. That is why I didn't use the name. This is often called quarter terete. So we have seen terete, semi-terete, and this is quarter terete. So there is a ridge but still it is not rounded. It is something like a strap leaf. So this is purely strap leaf, very thin leaf. Naturally, they love shade in grasslands. High altitude dweller again, flowering November and December. Now, one thing there, November and December. That means it, because it is in shady area, in a shady area, you know, during the monsoons, it will not be favorable for plant to grow. So it will wait for some time for the heavy downpour to stop, and when still the humus is rich there, they will start growing. So by September it will start growing, and by November, December you get the flower. After that, the whole plant will disappear. That is the peculiarity of all the ground orchids. The whole plant will disappear. There will not be even a trace of it unless you dig. Unless you dig deep, you have no signs of a plant living there. Another ground orchid, Calanthe sylvatica. Again, the name has the indicator. Sylvan means of the forest. This is the forest. Calanthe of the forest. That is the meaning. This also a humus-rich soil, along with the slopes of cold regions. So, because it is in the slope, flowering is from May. A very long span of flowering. If it is not on a plain, not a slope, it will flower lately in September. But if it is in a good slope, a steep slope, there will not be any waterlogging, and naturally it will start by May, by the onset of monsoon. Immediately it will spring up and end up in a flower. The flower is a single bunch coming from the top of the stem. Moderately high mountains, 400 meters. Now this is Satirium. Satirium nepalens. See the leaf? I need not explain the qualities. You yourself can. This is a ground orchid. Flowering again August after the heavy downpour in savannas where there is humidity. See the leaf? That shows you why it loves humidity. Then why the common name Kala Komban, referring to these two long stretching petals that resembles the horns of a bullock. Kala in Malayalam means bullock. Kala Komban, the horn of a bullock. Bull horn orchid. You can translate it in English as bull horn orchid. That is Satirium nepalens. And this is widely believed to be having some aphrodisiac properties, which the Thoda tribals of Nilgiri mountains, they use it, believing that this will enhance their sexual potential. So that is now widely exploited, and it is very hard to see it commonly there in the Nilgiri mountains. That is Satirium nepalens. Now another beautiful flower that also grows on the ground, Peculiarity gigantea, or the butterfly orchid. I need not explain why it is a butterfly orchid. See this. This is a peculiarity. This flower bunch, this is a flower bunch. Every flower has a bract to protect it. See, a sheath-like thing protecting it. These are the leaves, and how it grows on ground, it's clear from the photo. Grows in humid and open savannas. But it is a late flowering plant. September to November is the season. Because it is in the open savanna, there may be much humidity, which may be detrimental to the plant. That can be the reason why it waits for the heavy downpour to stop. Now the next one is Cortonia, the bee orchid of the east. So this is something that I have added here. The east. We call it the bee orchid, and I have added of the east because of this reason. See the last sentence of the slide. In the west, there is another bee orchid. That's why the Western world calls bee orchid another variety, which is called Ophrys, and they have incorporated the bee inside the name as well, Epiphyra. Ophrys epiphyra is the bee of the west, but we have Cortonia pedungularis as the bee orchid, very commonly seen in the Western Ghats. And if you look at the slide, you can see the the peculiarity which gives you an idea how to identify it easily. See why the name? Let us go to the first bee orchid. Look at this portion. That's why this is enlarged. This resembles a bee entering the flower, right? But this is not a bee. This is the labellum or the lip. It's a platform for the bee to come sit here and just sneak in to enjoy the honey. So since it resembles the shape of a bee, it is called the bee orchid. And now I will tell you what is the peculiarity. A very long peduncle or the stem of the inflorescence. And at the tip, there is a group of flowers. 3 to 5 will be there, or 5 to 7 will be there. This is the plant. Out of focus a bit. It's a vanda-like plant. It grows on tree trunks. Here is a small portion of the velamen also seen out of focus. We can see other photos with a clearer view of the velamen. So this is the Cortonia or the bee orchid of the east, which is found in evergreen to moist deciduous forests of low elevation, and flowering is from March to August. Here also there is set triggering of flowering by the monsoons. Though this is found on tree trunks, the flowering is initiated by the showers. So most of the orchid plants have some sort of connection with the rains, the monsoons, especially in the especially with the plants on the western Ghats. Now see, the flowers come in a very long peduncle. That is a peculiarity. If you see a small plant with very small yellowish flowers with a chocolate colored lip, you look for this one. If it comes from a very long stalk with flowers at the tip, that is Cortonia. Then this is the most common thing. Maravada in Malayalam. Maravada, or it is called Upputali. Upputali by the Tamilians. Akambe. Earlier we called it the vanda, but now it is renamed as Akambe, another species, Akambe. See, very small flowers with the stripes on it, and this grows on the tree as is shown in the slide. It's very common, like the Oberonia plant. Oberonia is also very widely distributed. Akambe also is like that, very widely distributed, flowering in March, April. Now see here, Cymbidium, very peculiar plant, very strong leathery leaves. Naturally it withstands much sunlight. See the long peduncle and innumerable number of flowers here arranged. These are the close-up of the flowers with a violet lip and creamy white sepals and petals. Very beautiful. Very long stalk. Very long stalk. Grows on tree trunks in arid, dry deciduous forest. So it can stand sunlight. Another peculiarity of this is, unlike the other epiphytic plants we have seen overhanging from tree trunks, here it is attached to the tree and its stem grows upwards, unlike that. Vandas, unlike Cortonia, unlike Oberonia, we see here the stem grows upwards. But you know, they make it very clear that there is no space for the birds or anything to sit here. So luxuriantly growing. Another peculiarity also is here for the Symbidium plant. I cannot show it on the slide, but whenever you meet with this kind of a leafy plants growing upright on tree trunks, look for its roots as well growing upwards. That is a peculiarity. No root overhanging here. There are some roots clinging to the tree trunk, and others are growing upwards. Behind this leaf canopy, you can see roots growing upwards. Why they grow upwards? They form a web-like structure in which they can collect bird droppings or rainwater for their future use. So here also they flower after the rains, May to June. See, this is Coleogyny, very small plants. See the peculiarity? The peculiarity of the stem, see, there's small ridges on the bulbs. See the bulbs as ridges, and every bulb ends up in 2 leaves. See, every bulb ends in 2 leaves. They grow on tree trunks and even on wet rocks. See, just like Porpax or the Gramophone Orchid we have seen in the first slide, these also grow on wet rocks. No need of a tree trunk or the bark itself. If they get some spray of water, they can grow on wet rocks also. Flowering is April and May. White flowers, very beautiful flowers. This is also another common plant in the Western Ghats. This is Bulbophyllum. About 7 varieties of Bulbophyllum species is available in the Western Ghats. This is the most common. Bulbophyllum sterile, it is pronounced as sterile. And in Malayalam, the tribals call it Mukuti Kaya. Mukuti is an ornament worn by tribal women, not only tribal women, all women, on their noses. It's a nose stud, Mukuti in Malayalam. So Mukuti Kaya, referring to the resemblance of its flowers. See, individual, this is a bunch of flowers. See, individual flowers are very small, dark chocolate in color, and the shape of individual flowers, the shape of the flower resembles that of a or the some disturbance is there. Please switch off the audio. Those who are speaking. Okay. Now in the flower bunch, there are 10 to 50 flowers, small flowers having the shape of a mukuti or the nostril ornament, which gives its name. It's widely spread among tree trunks of plains and mountains. Flowering is December to January, just before the monsoon. Now another beautiful orchid, looking like a Kathakali artist. Kathakali, the traditional art form of Kerala, with a curious dress code, and the artist will stretch his hands like this to two sides. That's why it's called Kathakali orchid, widely found in the Kerala part of the Western Ghats. See, with the round leaves again, we have learned what it is called, terete leaf. So it will withstand very direct, heavy sunlight. It can withstand, and this is seen in 500 meters altitude. Sweet smelling flowers, sweet smelling as well as sweetly decorated. The lip is having a violet pattern all over the labellum. Now we come to a group of very fragrant and very beautiful orchids. They are called arids. The term has a meaning. Aridis means something that lives in the air. Aridis. That itself shows they are always seen on tree trunks, free, hanging from the tree tops. See, here the roots are very clear. Velamen roots are here. Clinging roots as well as velamen roots are there. Beautiful flowers, big flowers. So these reasons, because of these reasons, they are widely exploited. Is there a problem with the audio?
No, the audio, your audio is perfect. Maybe some internet issue at the participants.
Okay, let me continue then. Yeah, it's almost 1 hour, so I shall speed up. See, evergreen forest, you can see aridis. Another aridis, I told you all these plants are sweet smelling ones. Aridis, the whole group has sweet smelling flowers. They are also commonly found. Another aridis, profusely flowering, and for which they are very widely exploited. A high altitude dweller from 800 to 1200 meters. Beautiful, sweet smelling flowers. This is a very peculiar vanda. That is why I have included it here. This is found towards the southern part of the Western Ghats. In the Kerala and Tamil Nadu part of Western Ghats, you can find it in very high trees. I say. So this is a pendulous type. This is overhanging from tree trunks. The peculiarity is the blue color. So in orchids in general, you see blue is a very rare color. Maybe because the pollinators does not attract, the eye pattern of the pollinators may not be adapted for finding blue color. Maybe just a wild guess of mine. See, the beautiful flowers are big also. This vanda has a very beautiful blue lipped flower, and the name tessellata, that is the pattern here. Tessellations, crisscross lines, that is tessellation. So the petals and sepals are similarly tessellated, brown. and the lip is violet in between. Very beautiful vanda, and sweet smelling also. Very uh, mild smell, but still that fruity smell is very pleasing. Now, a very peculiar vanda. I told you the selection is on this basis. See, vanda usually, see the earlier side, all these vandas, we have a general impression that they grow on tree trunks epiphytically. But here is the vanda that grows from the ground straight. They have these velamen roots and they have clinging roots as well. They will not stand erect like this. They need some sort of this part only is erect. Here there may be a tree. So it has some sort of a prop needed. They need only a prop. They are rooted on the ground and grows incessantly because the growth pattern is monopodial, not sympodial. So the flowers, Vanda spatulata, golden yellow, big flowers. So you can compare here with the leaf, the size of the flower. So very widely exploited, and naturally they are not seen in plenty nowadays. This is a high altitude dweller. Earlier, scientists grouped this because of this nature. This was not at all called a vanda because it grows from the ground. It was called epidendrum, but now beyond doubt it is grouped under vanda as vanda spatulate. Now, very beautiful orchid, widely distributed in the Western Ghats. The fox-tail orchid, because the whole bunch of flowers resemble the tail of a fox. Very faintly sweet smelling. Faint smell is there. And you can find this plant. I shall tell you one peculiarity of this plant with which you can identify it even when there is no flower. Mostly orchids are very hard to distinguish without flowers. But here the Ringostylis has a peculiarity for its leaf tip. Look at this part of the tip. There is an abrupt cut. Unlike any other leaf which will taper to an end, here we will see an abrupt cut. This may be some sort of serration may be seen here in some cases, but you know, as if somebody has cut a portion from here, it will look like. The tip of the leaf will look like as if it has some more part which somebody has cut away. That is how we can distinguish it from vandas and other aerides, etc. Sweet smelling. Now this is Polydota, called the rattlesnake orchid or Panamaravada in the tribal name. This is the inflorescence, very small flowers, but it will one bunch of flower will have more than 200 flowers arranged in it. Bigger than the earlier one, Oberonia, the most commonly seen orchid. This is much bigger flower. And the name rattlesnake because of its resemblance. The inflorescence resembles with the rattlesnake's tail, which has such scales, very much resembling this. One more reason is there. The rattlesnake makes a rattling sound to frighten the enemy. And here, this inflorescence also, when it is dried and when it is in plenty on a tree, when the wind tosses them, they will make a rattling sound, very much similar to the sound of the rattlesnake. See, leathery leaves and the bulbs also, just like the Bulbophyllum sterili we have seen, these bulbs are also four-ridged. It's very clear in the photo. Ridges are seen. Now this is Dendrobium Animalianum. The name refers to the highest peak of Western Ghats called Animalae. This is seen only there, above 1000 meters. See here, above 1000 meters. Pinkish white flowers. I didn't get any photo of this plant, and so this is taken from the internet, not a fine photo, but I have to introduce this also for you because it is Dendrobium found on the very high peak. And the peculiarity of this group, Dendrobium, the name itself has a meaning. Dendrum means wood in Greek. Biome is a biological organism. So someone who lives, some living thing on a wood, that is the name. So dendrobiums have a general nature of growing on tree trunks. But still, I tell you, there are dendrobium that grows on rock as well. I shall show you that. Dendrobiums in general grow on tree trunks. So this is a high altitude dweller. The peculiarity why I included this is because it is seen on the highest peak of Western Ghats. See, How beautiful these flowers are. It's a very commonly seen plant, very common. Even in the outskirts of Western Ghats forest, you can see this. In the district of Pathanamthitta in Kerala, even on roadside trees, you can see this. And see the season, January, February. At the height of summer, when the heat is scorchingly high, you can see these beautiful flowers. And what is the peculiarity? No leaf on the stem. This is not the nature, but just before the flower buds start, the scorching heat will shed all the leaves. The plant will be denuded by the summer to prepare itself for the flower. See, there's bunch of flowers, small flowers, but still, when in a group, it's very beautiful. It's called Vellaithil in Malayalam, white colored parasite. This also is called Vellaithil, Dendrobium barbatulum, and this is the one I told you, a Dendrobium that grows even on rock surfaces. Dendrobium barbatulum. I told you Dendrobium is the largest family, so a few more slides. I will quickly wind it up. Dendrobium herbaceum. This has another peculiarity. Mostly the sympodial type of growth pattern does not allow any branch to come for a stem, and here it is branched. See here, there are two branches. The two branches end up in flowers, and here is another branch ending up in a flower. So this is grass-like. That is why grass orchid. The growth pattern of the stem is grass-like. So Dendrobium herbaceum is called a grass orchid. This is also a moderately high altitude dweller. White colored flowers. Now see Dendrobium Henianum, similar. So you might have noticed all these dendrobiums shed their leaves before flowering. The bare stem. On the bare stem, you see the flowers. So naturally, it is more beautiful. This is Dendrobium Aphyllum. The very name tells you. So I have included two pictures to show you how the plant looks like when it is not in the flowering season. See, this is the plant. But when the flower comes, it's a bare stem you see. No leaves at all. The very name it is aphyllum, no phylum, no leaf. So this is called a no-leaf dendrobium. Even there is a leaf in other seasons. During the flowering season, the flowers are either solitary or two. Here you can see from the one stalk there are two flowers on two directions. It's also a fairly wide distribution in the Western Ghats. Now this is Crepidatum. These are all dendrobiums, commonly seen dendrobiums in the Western Ghats. So with that, we are coming to the end of the session. Now I am open for questions that I know. Again, I repeat, I am no scientist or having no science basis. I can clear your doubts if there are any, which I do know. Okay, Mr. Gaurav, Sarvesh.
Yeah,
Hello?
if anybody has any questions, they can write in the chat box, or you can unmute yourself and ask.
Is it Gaurav speaking? Or
Yes,
Sarvesh?
Gaurav.
Who is speaking?
Gaurav. Sir, there is one
Gaurav, can you
question
do
in the
one
chat box.
favor for me? Mr. Gaurav, can you do one
Yeah.
favor for me? You may
Yes,
look
sir.
at the, can you see the chat? Can you read it
Yes,
for
sir.
me
Yes, sir.
one by one?
Yes,
So
sure.
there can be an
Yes, sir.
order in answering also.
Yeah.
You please
So there
take
is
the
one
slide.
question from uh, NK Shinde. Sir, what is
Okay,
ecological significance of orchids, or can orchids act as indicator?
Yeah, naturally, orchid can act as indicators. So I've in the beginning itself told you, monsoons have a bearing with the flowering of orchids. Flowering shows the health of any plant. Any plant flowers when they are healthy. So if the monsoon goes like this, what we are experiencing now, if there is intermittent rain also, you are never going to see orchids, ground orchids in particular. So there can be indicators, no doubt about that. Okay, next one.
Is there any book available on orchids? It's by Rajesh Dubey.
This is the usual question that is asked. See, nowadays, good information is available online, and when you ask me about books, I should say that there is no much book available which can give you authentic information. If you read quite a few number of books, you can collect information, but I cannot suggest you a single book. And the book by Abraham and Valsala, Orchids of the Western Ghats, that can be taken as a basic text. And one again with Mr. Satish, same title, almost the same title. I don't exactly remember there is any difference between the text. The author is Satish Chandran, scientist of the TBGRI. These are the two good books I can suggest. Next one.
Can they be grown artificially at homes or farms?
Yes, you can grow it once you see certain plants. Say, for example, that Anectoculus I have shown you, the jewel orchid. See, they are very fine to look at, and actually there are very great demand for them with the florists. But once you take home, it depends on how you give the conditions. See, a high altitude is something that you cannot replicate in the place where you live. You can give it water, you can control the sunlight, you can control water, irrigation, everything, manure, everything. But what about altitude? So mostly these high altitude beauties are most sought after by growers, but they will not grow. But still, you can say that hybrids developed out of these beauties are available in the market, and you can grow it in your garden. See, for example, this jewel orchid, the hybrid variety is available with mostly growers from Kalimpong, the northeast. You can try growing it in your garden. Okay. Next question.
There is one question from Mr. Deepak Borwalkar. Is there any online forum for identification of orchids? Like it has been asked by many people actually. Yeah.
Online forum for identification.
Yeah.
Sorry, I'm not aware of that. Whether there is a
so can I add something?
You can use as a base. You can use Google Lens, I think, but it may not be correct. I've been many times misled by Google Lens. It's only a base.
Yeah. So can I add something, sir, to this?
Yes.
Online identification thing. Yeah. So there is one website called as iNaturalist and India Biodiversity Portal.
Yeah, that's it. iNaturalist is there, and your photos will be identified by a group of experts. That is there. But for a ready reference, I can say
no. There is no such ready reference. I think.
Yeah. That is the answer. What you said is true. I agree. Okay, Gaurav.
Yeah.
Next one.
Please explain a little bit about the propagation of orchids.
Oh. So we were having a class on orchids of the Western Ghats. You are not supposed to propagate them at home. If you need a class on orchid propagation, I am ready to do that. So when we think of the orchid species, first try to enjoy their beauty at their home, visiting their homes, not try to bring them to our homes. That is what I have to say. So every orchid has its own peculiar nature. Say, for example, I will tell you one incident with one of my friends. A pack of orchid lovers are here in my place, and we were into this right from the 1980s. So when our enthusiasm were at its peak, we just imported one Vanda Cerulean. That is the name. I still remember that. I don't have that now. It is withered. It was from the florist I told you about, from Kalimpong. They gave us two plants, Vanda Cerulean. Cerulean, from the name itself, you know what is the color of the flower? Blue. Very rare color. Vanda Cerulean. And they need high altitude. So from the books, from the information that we have, we know that it will not flower in the plains. I am living in a plain area very near to the sea, and so naturally there is no chance of it growing. Still, we because of the craze of possession, we just brought two plants, uh, and surprisingly, they flowered in our plain, but that was its end. By showing us the flower, both of the plants withered. So if I say something as the propagating methods, that would be disastrous. So I'm not going to that. For cultivars or the garden varieties, I can tell you, and please arrange another session for that. That will be my answer for that. Okay, Gaurav?
Yeah. So there is one question from Dr. Bhavna Narula. She's asking, is there any governmental or non-governmental agency carrying out conservation of orchids of Western Ghats
That I in the
apart from
beginning, in
maybe
the very
TPGR?
beginning, I have made a disclaimer, dear doctor. I am not connected with all these things. I am just an orchid enthusiast. I don't know what are the initiatives happening around. I can, at the maximum, I can say that certain non-governmental organizations in all these states, Karnataka, Maharashtra, Kerala, they are all having their own programs to conserve orchids. Especially the Karnataka Orchid Society is doing much in this regard. And here in Kerala, I can say the TBGR, I told you in the beginning, and the lady slipper orchid, which is peculiar to the Agasthyamala biosphere, they are being largely cultivated by TBGRI, not for sale, but they uh, plant it back in its original habitat. So that is a conservation initiative. About the current situation, madam, I'm sorry, I cannot say you a good answer for that.
There is one question from Bhavik. Is it fine to say the orchids with strap leaves are shade loving and grow in shade?
Strap-leafed plants are usually unable to withstand high temperatures and high sunlight, severe sunlight. So the very shape of the leaves decide how much sunlight they can withstand. That is what I told you. So strap leaf usually like say 50 to 60% of sunlight only. Maximum 50 to 60 sunlight only. Strap leaf. Okay.
So there is one more question from Keval. Many orchids are epiphytes. So how do they get minerals and nutrients, which is important for their growth as well as flower?
Sorry, Gaurav, I didn't hear that in the beginning.
Okay, so many
Sorry.
orchids are epiphytes. So how do they get minerals and nutrients?
Yeah, I told you in the meantime. I told you they get it from bird droppings. Number one, bird droppings. That is the major source, and from from the atmosphere where the rains, when the rains come down after the thunderstorm, there after the thunder, there will be a supplement of minerals available for the velamen roots to absorb, and from bird droppings. That is the major source. Okay. Gaurav,
Okay,
next
so
question.
there is next question about what kind of pollinators have you observed while working on orchids? Is there are any orchids in Western Ghats pollinated particularly by a specific pollinator, and
Yes, 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 yes.
is at the verge of extinction because of this reason? Sorry.
Extinction. I
This is a
should say
very,
no.
yeah.
I should say I haven't seen any. So there are specific pollinators, I can tell you, even specific varieties of ants. See, for example, the slide I have shown you, Bulbophyllum sterile, the flowers are stinking like a rotten flesh, and they attract bees as well as ants. But the bees never have seen pollinating them, but ants, a particular variety of small black colored ants the specific pollinators. But for the first part of the question, whether there is any orchid extinct because of the lack of pollination, I say I am very ignorant about that. Okay.
Yeah. So there is one question from Saurabh. He's asking in monopodial type, if growth is incessant, do the plant attains a large habit or size, or do older leaves die away periodically, keeping the plant habit to a certain size?
That's a very good question. You know, monopodial orchids, what I told you is truly incessant growers, growing without any end, unless you cut it. So when it grows incessantly, naturally, if they do not get any prop, if there is no tree or something nearby to lean upon, or even when they reach the top of the so-called prop, there is no other way than falling down. So from there, the stem will bend downwards. Then again, the growing tip will grow upwards. Like that, it will continue. So what you said is true. Old leaves will shed naturally. There is a limit for which there is a time span for every leaf to sustain. The leaves may fall off, but the stem will never break. It will be live, though it will look as very dried up. The stem will be active, live, and the tip will show leaves according to the availability of water. According to the availability of water, you can see luxuriantly leaved orchids, monopodial orchids, or monopodial orchids having 2-3 leaves only at the tip because of the aridness of the habitat in which it is placed. Okay.
There is one question from Pranay. He is asking, it is seen that flowering period coming early due to climate change.
Yeah. Yeah. So I shall give you a
is
very.
it true or
Is it over? The question over? No.
no? Yeah, the question is over. I think he wanted to ask, is it seen that flowering period, like, does climate change is affecting the flowering period of orchids?
Okay, okay. I shall give you a very good example that I have practiced. See, I have a dendrobium growing in my garden, which is called uh, Dendrobium Cruminatum. It's a very common thing, not native of Western Ghats. It is a foreigner, but commonly seen with all growers, with a very small white flowers, sweet smelling white flowers. It have Dendrobium Cruminatum. That's the name. Crumenatum. Cruminatum. So I have it in plenty. And now once I made an experiment with it, a potted plant was kept. See, usually these dendrobium flower after a rain. That is the usual thing that I have observed in my garden. These plants flower profusely. All the bulbs, say if I have 50 bulbs, all the 50 bulbs will immediately flower after a rain. So if you get a rain today, on the 7th day, my house will be full of white flowers. So 7 days after a rain. So I just made an experiment. I potted a plant, kept it inside the fridge for 30 minutes, and kept it out after that. Alas, what happened? The same thing repeated. So if I want a Dendrobium Cruminatum flower 7 days after, I have that trick with me. Put the potted plant inside. So what I have measured is a temperature drop is the stimulator. If there is a temperature drop in the atmosphere, that's why I told you after the first rain, after a series of very sunny days, if there's a rain, immediately these plants will flower. So that's a very good indicator that all these plants in nature have their own cycles of flowering based on the availability of rain or temperature, in particular temperature drop or temperature rise. That is the triggering factor. Okay.
Yes, sir. So Praveen has asked, sir, you told that seeds do not have endosperm, and so during germination, they are parasitic on mycorrhizae. So there are two questions actually. Is it true for all orchids, whether epiphytes or growing on soil, the mycorrhizae thing? And the second question is, later when the leaves appear, do they still remain associated with these mycorrhizae?
The second part I didn't hear properly, Gaurav. Please repeat the second part.
So second part is, So second part is later when the leaves appear, do they still remain associated with these mycorrhizae or not?
Okay, okay. At the first part, I may say that is not a parasitic relationship, but it's a kind of to a certain extent you can say it is parasitic because the fungus does not get it. But for the beginning only, just for the seed to germinate, it takes some nutrients from the mycelium, from the fungal associate. After that, after the coming of the first leaf, it grows on its own. Even when you destroy the fungus, nothing happens to the plant. Just for the part of germination, say for less than 5 days, it needs the association with the fungus. After that, it needs plenty of humus in the atmosphere. That is an obligatory thing. If the substratum gets dried up, this poor plant will also perish. But even when the fungus is wiped away after germination, nothing of that sort happens. If there is plenty of humidity, plenty of air available for the seedling, it will grow like anything. So the relationship is only for a very small period of 4 to 5 days. After that, the orchid grows on its own. And this is true with all the species, not only for tree dwellers, those who live on the ground also has this kind of, but more with the epiphytic, I should say. Mostly epiphytic orchids do like that. Ground orchids also have that because in all orchid plants, there is only the bare seed. How can a bare seed become a plant without the initial dose of food? So it has to associate with a particular kind of fungi. Every plant has its own specific fungus. Only then it grows into a plant, new plant. Okay.
Yeah, so we have limited time, so we'll take a couple of questions only, and then we'll end the session.
Or you can just mail it me. I shall properly send replies. Okay, for the next
sure.
questions that remain, we will stop it here, and all the other questions will be mailed to me. I have shown
we
the
can
mail
take one
ID
last
on the
question,
last
actually.
slide. Do you want
We
the
can
mail
take
ID?
last one question.
This is the
Yes,
mail
sir,
ID.
sure. Okay, so if anybody has any questions, they can note down the email ID of Dr. Krishnakumar. And can we take last one question?
Okay, please.
Yeah, so what is the significance of orchids in a forest ecosystem?
Orchids? I didn't hear you. Orchids?
Significance of orchids in a forest ecosystem.
In forest ecosystem. Okay.
Yeah.
In the beginning, there was a similar question. Is it an indicator of the climate change, etc.? So everything that grows in our nature has its own significance. Similarly, see, every flower has its own nectar, So many species of living things may be associated. So in that, I should say in the beginning, I have not gone to that angle in detail. This is only a general answer. Every plant has its own specific pollinator, means that pollinator takes something from, it's not coming just for pollination. It comes for taking something from the plant in return. So to sustain those, this plant is necessary. That is true with everything in nature, except for man. Everything in nature is having its own significance for keeping the ecosystem. So every orchid we see in the Western Ghats has its own specific pollinators as well as specific plants, or specific ants or flies or dragonflies having some sort of use with them. Okay. So the rest we can have as mail. Okay.
Yeah, sure. So thank you, Krishnakumar sir, for sharing this information. I thank you on behalf of Greenwork Trust for this lovely session. And I hope everyone enjoyed the session. We wish to bring you more such informative sessions for you on various topics, obviously. So I request everyone to make a small donation to our organization and support our nature education and awareness initiative. I will share the our bank details on our on the WhatsApp group. And thank you once again, everyone, for joining this session. Have a good day.
Okay, thank you.